People didn't expect anything unusual that night. It was just another awards ceremony, another red carpet, another evening of lights, cameras, and practiced smiles. But sometimes the smallest moment can change everything. And this story begins with one small moment. The moment KeanuReeves stepped forward quietly and helped Sandra Bullock fix her dress, while the cameras kept clicking, catching something real, something human, something that touched everyone who saw it. Keanu never liked red carpets. Too loud, too bright, too many expectations. He walked them because it was part of the job, but he always did so with calm steps and a soft expression. He didn't pose aggressively or chase attention. He simply existed, gentle among flashes and noise. Sandra was different. She handled the loudness with laughter and charm. But even she knew there were days when the pressure felt heavy. That night, Sandra arrived in a beautiful gown. Elegant, simple, soft in color. The kind of dress that made her look timeless. But dresses like that sometimes came with fragile details. As she stepped out of the car, the side of the gown caught slightly. Barely noticeable, but enough to make her hesitate. The crowd still cheered, photographers still shouted her name, but in that moment, she felt anxious. One wrong movement could tear the fabric, or worse, make her stumble in front of everyone. Keanu was already on the carpet. He was speaking quietly to a host when he saw her. He saw the way her hand froze, the way her eyes flicked downward, the way she smiled but didn't breathe. He excused himself gently and walked toward her, unnoticed by almost everyone at first. "Hey," he said softly, just loud enough for her to hear. Sandra looked up, relief washing through her eyes instantly. "Hi," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "My dress. I think something is wrong." Keanu nodded, calm and steady, as if the world around them didn't exist. "It's okay. Just turn a little." He didn't touch her without asking. He didn't make her feel small or embarrassed. He moved slowly, respectful, giving her space, giving her dignity. She adjusted her weight carefully, letting him see the small place where the fabric had caught. With steady hands, gentle and precise, he fixed the fold. No rush, no panic, no show. And the cameras caught all of it. Not because he wanted them to, not because it was dramatic, but because kindness is something the world recognizes instantly. The crowd reacted too. The cheers softened. It was as if everyone understood that something real was happening. Something tender. Something rare. Sandra breathed out slowly, the tension leaving her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu smiled, a small, quiet smile. Always, they posed for photos side by side. Not because it was planned, but because the moment had drawn them together. The press later would say the spark returned. That something old woke up, that love never left. But for now, it wasn't about romance. It was about understanding, about two people who had shared years of laughter, memories, and silent support. But beneath that moment of peace, something heavier sat in Keanu's chest, something he had been carrying quietly, something he had not told anyone. Sandra noticed it, even through all the bright lights. His eyes were gentle, but tired. Later, when the cameras turned away, she touched his arm lightly. "Are you really okay?" she asked. He did not answer right away. And that was the first sign that this night was only the beginning of something deeper, something emotional, something that would soon test them both. The night did not calm down after that moment. In fact, it grew louder. Reporters replayed the clip again and again. Social media started whispering, then talking, then screaming. But inside the event hall, where the music played softly and everyone laughed and posed and drank sparkling drinks, Keanu and Sandra sat at a small table in the corner, just far enough away from the noise. Sandra watched Keanu carefully. She knew him, not the actor, not the public figure, the person, the quiet soul who always carried more weight than he showed. Something about the way he stood on that carpet, the way his hands moved so gently, the way he breathed slower than usual. She could feel it. Something was wrong. "You were somewhere else," she said softly, not accusing, just noticing. Keanu looked down at the glass of water in his hands. Not wine, not champagne. Water, always water. "I was thinking," he replied. "About what?" she asked. He hesitated, long enough for her to understand the thought was heavy. "About time." he whispered. The room was loud, but that word felt quiet, almost fragile. Sandra leaned in just a little. Keanu, what's going on? He exhaled slowly, staring at the table. I feel like everything moves too fast. The world, the expectations, the attention. People always want something, and I don't know if I have much left to give. Sandra's heart softened. Not because she pitied him, but because she had felt it too. The exhaustion that does not come from work, but from life itself. You don't have to give anything tonight, she said gently. You're allowed to just be here. Keanu smiled, but it wasn't his warm smile. It was one of those quiet, tired smiles that said thank you without believing it fully. Before she could say anything else, someone called them to the stage. Their film was being honored. They both stood, walking side by side, appearing calm and graceful to everyone watching. But Sandra kept close, always making sure he didn't drift into that quiet place alone. They accepted the award. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed again. The world saw perfection. But behind the stage, away from the applause, Keanu leaned against the wall for a moment, eyes closed, steadying himself. Sandra placed her hand on his shoulder. Come with me, she said. They slipped out a side door into a small outdoor garden where lanterns hung from trees. And the air was cool. No one was there, no noise, just the sound of their breathing and distant city life. Keanu sat on a wooden bench. Sandra sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said it. I lost someone last month. Sandra's breath caught. She turned toward him instantly. Who? He swallowed hard, his voice almost breaking. Someone who mattered. Someone who reminded me there is still softness in the world. And I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want anyone to make it public. Grief feels private, sacred. Sandra's eyes softened with deep empathy. Keanu, I'm so sorry. He nodded but didn't speak. His eyes glistened, but the tears did not fall. He was holding them the way he held everything, quietly, painfully. And Sandra, she didn't tell him to be strong. She didn't tell him everything would be okay. She didn't try to fix it. She simply reached for his hand and held it. They sat like that for a long time, no words, just warmth, shared silence, shared memory, shared humanness. Thank you, he whispered. Eventually, and Sandra understood something clearly in that moment. The moment he helped her fix her dress was not the beginning of the story. The real beginning was this, the moment he let her see his heart. The garden lights glowed softly above them, swaying a little in the night breeze. It was peaceful there, hidden from the flashes and voices and questions. Yet even peace could not erase the heaviness sitting in Keanu's heart. Grief was not something that left when the world went quiet. It stayed. It lived in the spaces between breaths, and Sandra could feel it, like a low quiet sadness in the air. Keanu kept his gaze on the ground, as if the earth itself was the only thing stable enough to hold him. Sandra didn't rush him. They sat with the silence a little longer. Sometimes silence is the only language grief understands. Finally, Sandra spoke, but very gently. Do you want to tell me about them? She asked. Keanu swallowed, his voice soft, almost breaking. She was someone I met before the world got loud again. Someone simple. Someone who didn't care about movies or fame or anything like that. She just saw me. Sandra listened. She didn't blink. She didn't interrupt. We talked about things that felt real. Keanu continued. About music and sunsets, and how life is short but beautiful. She grounded me. And then suddenly, she was gone. And I felt like something inside me just dimmed. Sandra felt her chest tighten. Not from jealousy, not from fear, but from empathy so deep it felt like her own heart was holding his grief with him. I understand, she whispered. When you lose someone who brings you peace, the world becomes louder and heavier, and it feels like you have to carry everything alone. Keanu looked at her then. His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them too. Something vulnerable, something true. You see me, he said quietly. Sandra nodded, her voice barely a breath. I always have. And that was the moment the story began to shift, not because of romance, not because of grand gestures, but because of honesty, because of two people who had walked through fire separately, now sitting together in the same quiet flame, But the world outside didn't wait for healing. The garden door opened. Their publicist found them, slightly rushed, slightly anxious. "They're asking for you both," she said. "People are talking about the dress moment. It's everywhere. Everyone is asking if you two are." Together, Keanu exhaled slowly. Sandra closed her eyes for a moment. She knew what that meant. Storms were coming. Public opinion. Media twisting the story. People projecting love, drama, fantasy, gossip. The world would look at that gentle moment of kindness and turn it into something shiny and loud and unreal. Keanu stood up, steady but quiet. "I'm not ready for them to take this," he said. Sandra stood too, facing him. "Then we don't let them." Keanu looked at her, searching her face. "How? We stay close," she said. "We stay honest. We decide our story before they try to write it for us." The publicist was still watching them, waiting, unsure. Sandra turned to her. "Give us 5 minutes." The publicist nodded and stepped back inside. Sandra and Keanu walked toward the exit together. But just before they reached the door, Sandra stopped him, her hand gently touching his arm. "Keanu," she whispered, "you are not alone. Not in this. Not in anything that comes next." The words sank deep. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, Keanu's breath came easier. They walked inside together, side by side, not as actors performing for the world, not as celebrities managed and controlled, but as to human beings choosing to stand in the same light. And that simple act, walking together, caught the eyes of everyone in the room. And the spark that began on the red carpet, people didn't just see it now. They felt it. The days after the event were not calm. The moment Keanu fixed Sandra's dress had gone viral. Every news page, every social feed, every fan account was talking about them. The clip was shared millions of times. People slowed it down, studied every glance, every breath, every tiny touch of kindness. Some called it love. Some called it fate. Some turned it into jokes or speculation. But none of them understood what was really happening. For Keanu, the attention felt heavy. He had learned to protect his heart by staying quiet, moving gently, staying away from noise. But now, the world was staring again. And this time, they were not staring at a movie or a role. They were staring at something real. Sandra, on the other hand, handled the attention differently. She was warm, graceful, composed. But even she knew when the world went too far. She saw headlines trying to decide their story for them. She saw interviews requesting details they had no intention of sharing. She saw pressure forming like a slow wave coming toward them. They needed space. So one afternoon, Sandra called Keanu. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the quiet weight behind it. "Come over," she said. "I made tea." Keanu arrived at her house, the one that felt lived in and soft, full of laughter and warmth. Sandra always kept blankets on the couches and photos on the walls. It felt like home, not a museum. She handed him a mug, chamomile, his favorite. They sat on the couch, feet tucked under themselves, as if the world outside did not exist. "The attention is going to keep growing," she said softly. "We both know that." Keanu nodded. "I know. So we have to decide something," she continued. "Not about them. About us." Keanu looked at her, waiting. Sandra took a slow breath. "What do you want this to be, Keanu?" U.S. His eyes softened. He was quiet for a long moment. Not because he didn't have an answer, but because the answer was big, vulnerable, real. "I want to stay," he whispered. "I want to be close to you. I want to talk to you. I want to breathe in a room where I don't have to pretend I'm okay." Sandra's eyes glimmered, gentle and warm. "I want that too." But then something changed in Keanu's face. Something uncertain. Something afraid. "But what if I am still hurt?" he asked. "What if I am not ready to give everything? What if I break something between us?" Sandra did not look away. She did not soften her truth. She spoke it with courage. "Then let us not rush it," she said. "Love doesn't have to be loud. It can be slow, gentle. We can just take care of each other. That is enough." Keanu's breath shook, but his shoulders lowered, just a little, like a wall had loosened. But before the moment could settle, Sandra's phone buzzed. She reached for it, hesitating. A message from her agent. "A reporter is claiming they have photos of you and Keanu talking in the garden. They want to publish," Sandra's face tightened. Keanu watched her carefully. They are going to twist it, she said quietly. They won't show the truth. They will make it something loud and dramatic. Keanu set his mug down gently, his voice calm, steady. Then we tell the truth first. Sandra looked up, surprised. Not a press statement, he added. Not an interview, just us together, in public. Not hiding, not performing, just being real. Sandra smiled. A soft, slow, deep smile. Walking side by side, she whispered. Keanu nodded. Yes, and in that moment, something shifted. The fear did not disappear. But it no longer ruled. They were going to face the world. Not as rumors. Not as silence, but as two souls choosing each other. The next morning began quietly, but there was a different kind of calm in both of them. It was not the calm that comes from hiding. It was the calm that comes from deciding, from choosing to walk into the world without fear. Keanu arrived at Sandra's house early, before the sunlight had fully lifted over the trees. When she opened the door, she didn't speak. She simply stepped forward and hugged him. Not a dramatic embrace, just a soft, steady one. The kind that says, I am here, and I am not going anywhere. They got ready without rushing. Sandra wrapped a light scarf around her shoulders. Keanu tied his hair back loosely, normal, gentle, real. They didn't plan what to say. They didn't rehearse their expressions. They only knew they were doing this together. When they stepped outside, the world was waiting. Two reporters across the street, 3 cameras, a car parked where it didn't belong. The air felt tight for a moment. Sandra could sense Keanu's breath catch. Not fear, something deeper. That instinct to guard himself, to retreat. She reached for his hand. He didn't hesitate. And the moment their fingers intertwined, the cameras stopped feeling like a threat. They became background, noise, something distant. They walked together. Simple steps. Calm pace, no rush. No performance. Just presence. A reporter called out, Are you two a couple now? Keanu did not stop. He did not hide. He did not run. He said, in the same gentle voice he always used, We care about each other. That is enough for now. No big declaration. No labels. No story for headlines. Just truth. They walked to a small cafe nearby. Not a fancy place. Just a quiet corner spot with warm light and the smell of fresh bread. Sandra chose it because the owner knew how to leave people in peace. As they sat inside, Keanu released her hand slowly, but his posture remained soft, open, present. How do you feel? Sandra asked. He thought for a moment. Lighter, he said. Like I'm not pretending anymore. Sandra smiled. Good. Because you don't have to pretend with me. Never. But peace never sits still for long. While they were drinking tea, a message arrived for Sandra. She checked her phone, expecting something small. But her face changed. Keanu noticed instantly. What is it? She turned the phone toward him. A new headline was spreading fast. KeanuReeves in grief. Sandra Bullock saving him again. The article had taken the private truth of his loss and twisted it into a dramatic story. It wasn't cruel on the surface, but it turned his pain into entertainment. It made his heartache a spectacle. Keanu single quotes as hands tightened around the cup. The tea rippled, trembling with him. Sandra reached across the table, gently touching his wrist. Look at me, she said. He lifted his eyes. They do not get to define your pain, she whispered. They do not get to own your story. You share what you want, when you want. No one else gets to decide that. Keanu breathed out slowly. A long, slow exhale, grounding. Double quotes I know, he said quietly. But it still hurts, Sandra nodded. Because you are human, and that is not something to be ashamed of. Her voice was soft, but strong. The cafe owner, who had been pretending not to notice them, walked over and quietly placed fresh slices of warm bread on the table. No words, just kindness. Keanu looked up at Sandra again, something shifting in his eyes, something clear. You make the world feel softer, he said. Sandra single quotes S expression softened too. And you remind me that quiet is not empty. It is meaningful. They stayed there for hours. Not hiding. Not running. Just being. And the world outside continued talking, guessing, spinning stories. But the real story, the one only they understood, was unfolding slowly, gently. Honestly, they were not falling in love loudly. They were growing into it. With patience. With truth. With care strong enough to hold pain and healing at the same time. Asterisk. The world did not quiet down. It rarely does. Stories continued, articles grew louder, and people kept trying to shape the narrative into something dramatic. But something had changed between Keanu and Sandra. Before, the noise would have pushed them apart, made them retreat into separate corners of the world. But now, the noise only made them walk closer together. A few days later, they decided to go for a walk along a quiet lakeside trail. No cameras, no reporters, just them, trees softly swaying around them, the water calm and reflective. The air smelled clean, and for the first time in a long time, Keanu felt like he could breathe without tension in his chest. I didn't realize how much I needed silence with someone, Keanu said gently, watching a leaf float along the surface of the lake. Sandra walked beside him, hands tucked in her coat pockets. Not just silence, she said. Safe silence. Keanu looked at her. There it was. The truth he had been reaching for. Safe. That was what she was. They found a bench and sat down. The wind was cool, brushing through their hair. The sky was just starting to turn golden with the late afternoon sun. Sandra leaned back, letting herself relax, her shoulders dropping. You know, she said softly, when people talk about love, they always describe something loud, overwhelming, fiery. But I think real love is something like this. Quiet, steady, something that meets you where your heart is tired. Keanu listened, and his heart opened, slowly, like something awakening. He turned toward her. I'm scared, he admitted. There was no trembling in his voice this time. Just honesty. Sandra nodded. So am I, Keanu exhaled. But I still want this. I want us, not rushed, not forced, just real. Sandra's eyes softened, filling with something warm and deep. Then we will move slow, she said. We don't have to explain it to anyone. We don't owe the world anything. We only owe ourselves the truth. Keanu reached for her hand. Not to show the world, not to prove anything. Just to feel her there. Their fingers intertwined, and it felt like something peaceful clicked into place. They sat like that as the sun continued its slow descent. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Silence was no longer something to fear. It was shared, held, gentle. Eventually, Keanu turned to her and spoke in a voice so soft it blended with the breeze. The night I fixed your dress, it wasn't just about the dress. I saw you, and I remembered how many times you've held me up without saying a word. And I think my heart remembered something it had been trying not to remember. Sandra's eyes filled, not with sadness, but with something honest and full, that we were never really done. She whispered. Keanu nodded slowly. We were just waiting, he said. The sun dipped lower, golden light washing over them. No crowd. No cameras. No pressure. Just two souls who had walked through life's storms, finding each other again after years of quiet distance. They didn't kiss. They didn't rush into declarations. They simply sat there hand in hand, knowing the story between them had never ended. It had just been unfolding slowly, patiently, until they were both ready to receive it. And the moment the world caught, the dress, the whisper, the gentle gesture, was not the start of something new. It was the moment the world finally noticed something that had been growing quietly all along. Not loud love, not dramatic love, but true love, the kind that heals.